So I thought I would do a collection video today since I haven't really been around in forever and I haven't chit-chatted with you guys in a long time. So this channel is still active, working on keeping it active. So today I actually just wanted to take a look at my films based off of Arthurian lore, or I guess you could say movies doing with the King Arthur myth. So I just wanted to take a relatively quick look at some of these films since growing up, the whole King Arthur mythology was a very big deal to me. I really loved the stories. So I guess starting with one of my first favorites, and I'm sitting behind my camera, so I can't really see what I'm recording. I'm dealing with a glare here, is of course Merlin, Sam Neill and Miranda Richardson. You also have Rutger Hauer, Helena Bonham Carter, Martin Short, Isabella Rossellini. So it's a good cast. It's a TV film. I believe it played on like one of those family channels originally, but obviously they took some of the grittiness out of the excuse me, out of the mythology. I keep catching a glare there, sorry. So it's definitely a kid-friendly film, but I really like how they played off of it, the whole fact that Merlin, as usual, he's always looking out for the best interest of others. He also needs to make sure that everyone, I guess, fulfills their destiny or meets their fate. And a commonality between or amongst the Merlin character in all of these films is that he always means well, but even though he's some higher person, you know, everyone forgets that he's just a man and they regard him as some otherworldly being, but he's flawed himself and he has good intentions, but he makes bad choices, and either he himself or the people around him suffer due to these choices. And I'm sorry, somebody will not quit texting me. I'm just trying to ignore that, but yeah, if you've ever seen this one, I think it's excellent. Obviously, the CG itself is extremely dated, very crude and very poor looking compared to today's standards, but it's just a really great story. And I like how the fact that you have Miranda Richardson's character, she basically fashioned Merlin, so he's basically flesh of her flesh, and he's meant to fulfill what she had originally destined for everyone else, and he just takes his own path. So I really like how it's more his story rather than focusing on King Arthur and everyone else around him. So I really love this spin. Very disappointing is the TV sequel, which was Merlin's Apprentice, which I guess you could say is more of a spin-off, and honestly I'm debating getting rid of this because it's just garbage. It's an absolute spin-off. The only two people who came back were Sam Neill and Miranda Richardson. It has nothing to do with the King Arthur mythology whatsoever, and it just really takes a weird veer left. The story is very weak to begin with, and it's just garbage, basically. And speaking of garbage is the next one, which is another one I'm thinking of getting rid of from my collection. I actually feel really sad that I own this one, which is Merlin To Return. This was also a TV movie, so apparently only Arthurian mythology is only good enough for television. I'll prove you wrong in just a few moments, but I really hate about this one that they meld the present with the past, so you have like some time travel type nonsense going on as well. Unfortunately, Tia Carrere is in this one, and I remember when she used to be the big deal, but this movie is just trash. Definitely not something I want to keep in my collection. This next one, which I actually liked a lot more than I thought I was going to, is Arthur and Merlin, which they used the pronunciation Myrddin in this one for Merlin. but I believe it's a direct-to-video film, and it's actually a lot better than I had expected. Decent special effects. It's a low-budget film, but they definitely operated within their constraints. They didn't try to become something that they weren't. And as always, this also is the story of Merlin and how he's meant to be a guide and a leader to some degree. And we see how for a while he, I guess, became somewhat of a hermit. He spent time on his own. But this one is actually just a really good film. And I'm sorry, I'm just going off of memory with a lot of these because I haven't watched them in a long time. But this one is really good. I would definitely recommend anybody go ahead and take a look at this one. As far as Arthurian lore, this next one is one of the first ones I ever watched. My junior high school English teacher showed this to us, which, great film, Sean Connery. You have, of course, Richard Gere. The thing I cannot shake is that one scene where Lancelot finally gets to kiss Guinevere and he practically just eats her face. Just really goes at her full force. And obviously he had really longed for her for a very long time, but of course, this is the story of Sir Lancelot and how he tried to uphold the morals of the Round Table as far as chivalry and whatnot, but the heart wants what the heart wants, and unfortunately that's something that nobody can just ignore. Touching again on that theme is a slightly more recent film, I believe from the early 2000s, Tristan and Isolde. And of course this is the story of Sir Tristan, who is played by James Franco. And of course these guys are basically considered Romeo and Juliet before Romeo and Juliet was a thing. So of course he takes a liking to the girl, and I believe it's the uncle that he actually had gone off to go champion for her on the uncle's behalf. So she unknowingly accepts the marriage proposal, not realizing that she's agreed to marry the uncle rather than the guy that she actually likes. And the one version of the story, the uncle was actually just a horrible guy, and he devised this plan on purpose because he wanted to make Sir Tristan miserable. But in this version they basically just went the Disney route, and he's more the tragic person. He actually loved the girl and she loved someone else. So yeah, what would you say, unrequited love? This next one is one that I absolutely loved in my early 20s. I was just absolutely nuts about this one. So it's the Mists of Avalon, which I guess to some degree a lot of people feel it's more of a feminist story, but it's, more the story of not just the Lady of the Lake, but of course Morgaine or Morgana Le Fay. And of course, I guess we have the tragedy of how she unknowingly fell in love with her half-brother, not realizing that she had been paired off with Arthur during one of the, I guess you could say, the mating rituals. To say it in a more polite way, of course, there was a lot more complexity to that. I'm just really simplifying it. But yeah, this is a very complex story as far as the women involved. Of course, you have Angelica Houston playing the Lady of the Lake, and in this role she very much fits the Merlin role. She's fulfilling her duty, she's guiding everyone, and she's making sure that everybody fulfills their destiny, and she means well, and once again things just go bad. And so but this one is a great movie. I believe it's a 3-hour long TV movie. It was a mini series, but it's excellent. It's, to some degree it's dated, but I love the costumes and the authenticity in this one. You can really see the homespun fabric as opposed to what was used in Merlin, which of course was a more low budget production. You can't really see it here. I was kind of hoping it would have shown, but it was very gaudy, synthetic, fakey material, so it wasn't as authentic looking. It was very costumey. But of course, I believe, if I remember correctly, this was filmed in New Zealand, and like I said, I'm just going off of memory here, guys, so sorry if I'm just rambling or being boring. This one, I really wasn't too crazy about it the first time I watched it, and it took a while to grow on me, but I like how they took the King Arthur mythology and they made it more realistic and easier to grasp or to relate to. I mean, it's not as enveloped in the mythology. It's more the story of everyday people. But yeah, you have great action sequences, great acting. I think it's a wonderful film in itself. You know, I definitely, if you're a purist and you're into the whole King Arthur sword and sorcery, then I'd say probably avoid this one. But if you're willing to see it from a different take and new eyes, then it's definitely well worth it. And this next one, in my opinion, is the best of all the King Arthur films. We have Excalibur. And of course, in this story, we also have Arthur, we have Merlin, and I believe it's Morgaine, which what I don't like about this one is Morgaine, of course, she wanted to become powerful, and to some degree she wills herself to become Merlin's consort, where that was originally Nimoy's role, or the Lady of the Lake. That was my dog, sorry. It was originally Nimoy and Merlin, but to some degree here they just kind of melded characters. So she's schooled as far as becoming a sorceress herself, and of course, as Nimoy did in the original mythology, she traps Merlin in a tower, and he's basically held prisoner. So that's my only complaint, but I love the symbology. It's definitely a very detailed story. I would say it's easier to follow if you're more familiar with the King Arthur mythology. Of course, you have the story of Uther and whatnot. So as long as you know who everyone is and how they're actually related and what their roles are, it's easier to follow, in my opinion. But excellent movie. It's the best one out of all of the Arthurian lore type films, in my opinion. This next one is still a very fun film, very English though, but you have Richard Harris in Camelot, and of course, for those of you who remember the name Richard Harris, he later went on to play the original Dumbledore. But yeah, it's also a great film in itself. If you don't mind musicals, definitely well worth the watch. But like I've said, I'm just a King Arthur junkie. I love all of this stuff. And this next one, which really isn't tied to Arthurian mythology at all, the only reason I just picked it up is because it loosely references Morgana Le Fay. But it's a very artsy film. It gives the impression of being somewhat of an exploitation film, and it's really not. I mean, you do have nudity, you do have a lot of, what would you say, lesbianism, but it's very artistic. It's very artsy nudity. It's not gratuitous and, oh, let's ogle the naked women. Yes, there's tons of beautiful women, but it's not done in a matter where you're staring at them as objects. They're each little goddesses and nymphs unto themselves, and they're respectable little characters, even though they're being held against their will by this one person. But that's just a very broad overview of my Arthurian films right there. And this is just a video I've been wanting to make for a while. Like I said, it probably would help if I had rewatched everything. I could have talked about it a lot better. But I just wanted to do just kind of a quick little run through. And this video I already knew was going to be long to begin with. I know there are tons of films that I still haven't seen. There are tons out there that are not even in this collection. Definitely a few that I still haven't gotten around to seeing, which are still on my list. But Yeah, anything out there that you guys have seen that you feel would make a great addition to this collection, or anything that you would love to suggest, I am all ears, because like I've said, I am nuts about Arthurian lore, whether or not it's anything having to do with the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur himself, or of course Merlin, which of course is my preferred character. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had for you guys today. Just a quick little chit chat and a run through, and I guess I will talk to you later.